President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. They're telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait,
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, did you hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Go online, check us out at TalkStreamLive.com. That's TalkStreamLive.com with all the radio stations that have Ground Zero on for 3 hours. You can listen online if you aren't near a radio, or if your station doesn't carry the full 3 hours, find one that does, or call your program director and ask if we could have Ground Zero on for 3 hours in your neck of the woods. That'd be awesome, because we like to get the whole show out to you, not just parts of it. Tonight's show is actually based on a concern from listeners in Iowa about something that's happening there. They say they're getting news reports, and people are baffled about what's happening. I think it's Muscatine County in Iowa, southeastern Iowa. Sort of, of course, I would assume it's some country area, some out-of-the-way place, but the news reports are quite haunting. Listen to this.
Our top story tonight, men in black trench coats jumping out and cars driving at night.
I can remember back when I worked alongside Wolfgang Gossett, the man who would later become known as, one of the suspects in the D.B. Cooper case. And he told me about the men in black. It was long before the cartoonish version that we have seen in the movies came along. And he said that we need to be aware of them, that the black hats and the mirrored shades were covers for men who were not mentally part of this earth. Their amoral attitudes and their stares were part of legends that were first presented by the likes of John Keel in the book The Mothman Prophecies. I remember hearing about the men in black in the Maury Island situation in the Northwest here. Thomas E. Bullard, a folklorist and UFO investigator, argues that the men in black step into the shoes vacated by angels and demons. They have now been modified to reflect extraterrestrial rather than supernatural employment, but clearly are functionaries of the same mold. Jerome Clark once wrote, he actually talked about William Wood's 1973 book, A History of the Devil, which says, sometimes the devil wears green or gray, but mostly he is dressed in black and always is in the fashions of the day. It's also the strange song called Down in the Park by Gary Newman. Newman, who himself looks very much like an alien-human hybrid, wrote the song about a vision he had about being in a park where the gray aliens called mockmen, which are described as anthropomorphic machines with human skins that abduct, rape, and kill human beings for entertainment. It can be argued that the mockmen are like the men in black. In fact, one of the mockmen is called Number 5, who presents himself at first as a friend and then later is revealed that he literally is an abusive, evil entity. When we hear of secret intelligence operations, we have to realize within our government there is secret groups. There's a secret government, which is like an octopus with tentacles that reach into every aspect of our lives. Those government tendrils are in the media, the schools, and our neighborhoods, And we have the government we see in another government that has been called the shadow government, led by individuals in the shadows that use well-placed programming and covering the tracks of agents that act on behalf of what can be called the New World Order. Are the men in black that order, or are they something more? Are they like the Mockmen? Are they like machines with human skins? Are they more alien? And why is it they always show up when supernatural activities happen or celestial events happen? Well, tonight we bring on again, as is always a pleasure to bring on the program tonight, Tim R. Schwartz, an Indiana native, actually he's from Indiana, and an Emmy Award-winning television producer, videographer, and is the author of a number of popular books, including The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, America's Strange and Supernatural History, Secret Black Projects, Evil Agenda of the Secret Government, Time Travel, A How-To Guide, Richard Shaver, Reality of the Inner Earth, Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, and is a contributing writer for the books of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The First Ghostbuster, Brad Steiger's Real Monsters, Gruesome Critters and Beasts from the Dark Side, and Real Ghosts, Restless Spirits, and Haunted Places. He's also the editor of the internet newsletter Conspiracy Journal. It's considered one of the essential reading journals by paranormal researchers worldwide. Oh boy, Tim Schwartz, welcome to Ground Zero.
Why, thank you, Clyde. It's a pleasure being with you again tonight.
It's amazing. I had to call on you to come in and comment on this. You know, this is the first time, I think, in a long time I've heard a Men in Black story that certainly is mysterious, because they don't really give too much detail, only that they say that they're standing on the side of this country road harassing motorists and even jumping out in front of cars. What do you make of this?
Yeah, you know, these stories sound an awful lot like, more along the lines of like the Lover's Lane ghost or cryptids that usually happens along, dark country roads. I checked on Google Maps, and this county is just to the west of Davenport, Iowa, and it's a really rural area. And, unlike the traditional, Men in Black reports, which tend to be more on a personal level, this just seems to be something going on to scare people. Traditionally, the Men in Black would approach somebody who had, say like a UFO sighting or something along those lines, approach them while they were alone, warn them not to talk or whatever, and then disappear. This situation, with the exception of, now I did a little bit of research, and, there have been a number of UFO sightings in eastern Iowa, April, May. Sorry, there was an interesting case in Waterloo, which is just north of this county, where somebody said that they saw about 15 to 20 glowing figures in the sky, floating overhead. So, it's, whenever you have a situation like, what's going on now, where there are strange people, entities, whatever you want to call them, being seen alongside the roads, walking along the road, jumping out, trying to get the cars to stop, things like that. You'll also find that there'll be an uptick of UFO reports, ghostly incidents, cryptids, Bigfoots, dogmen, things like that.
I was noticing that, in fact, there was Janine's been sending me, my wife now. She's my wife, yes. My wife, Janine, has been sending me a lot of information about UFO sightings, and she actually, when I told her I was going to talk about the MIBs or the Men in Black in Iowa, she had sent me a report, it was a while ago, talking about how there were flying triangles seen over Iowa. Some were seen over Indiana, where you're from. Waterloo, Iowa. Apparently, there was a UFO sighting there, as you said. I can go down a list of some in Des Moines. We're seeing there seems to be a flap over that area of the country right now, and just bringing the Men in Black into the picture make it even more intriguing. The idea of why would they spend time and especially the thing about this too. This is something that I think also needs to be brought up, Tim. If this is a small town, or a small area, and and they see these Men in Black in the trench coats standing on the street, and the police say, well, it's probably teenagers pulling pranks. How many people really live in that area? And would you recognize who these men are in the trench coats? Think about
Exactly.
it. If it's a small town, you'd know who they are, unless they cover their faces in black or something. But just the idea that the police, I think, are kind of neglecting their ability to investigate, saying it may be teenagers and pranks. In fact, probably literally joking about it, which I think is weird. But people are terrified by this. And it's out, like you say, in a very rural area of Iowa. So you'd be able to recognize who the people are in the trench coats. You know, large people jumping out in front of cars or whatever. People get these. It's just crazy what's going on in the world. Tim Schwartz with us tonight on Ground Zero. The numbers to call 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. If you had an encounter with a MIB or a man in black or something that would be considered a shadow entity or a dark entity, who knows, maybe on the side of the road or standing in front of you. It's just creepy. 888-673-3700. We'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. Nate writes me, my wife and I were driving I-25 4 years ago. Almost hit a man walking down the white line dividing lanes wearing a black trench coat. It was shocking. I guess the guy disappeared, but Tim Schwartz with us tonight. You know, when we're talking about the men in black, I can say this. I have met at least, one person who claimed to be a man in black, talked with him, interviewed him a bit, found out what he was all about. And then I've seen men in black, or I saw a group of men in black walking along a Portland street. Actually, it was in an area where there was this bar. Saw him walking around, was kind of shocked that I saw him, and then he just disappeared. Couldn't find him after that. And I always ask myself, since, I would say that men in black are pretty much flesh and blood, but there are those that say that these dark entities, these shadow entities, more like men in black entities, are supernatural. Or many say they're like the mock men, which they are almost like robots, which they act weird. They don't act human. They act kind of like that they've been programmed. What do you say, Tim? What do you think they are?
Well, actually, Clyde, I think it's like a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. I do think that there is, I don't know whether it be a branch of an intelligence service or something just completely outside of, what we would think of as, like normal government or military operations that maybe somewhere along the line started to adopt the ideals that people were reporting about the men in black, because they saw that it was getting attention and it seemed to be effective, and they actually started to deploy people dressed in black that use the same kind of techniques. I do think, however, that based on a number of reports that I've read about and reports that people, that personally people have told me, that there seems to be, and I use this word, I'll put quotation marks around it, of a supernatural or paranormal element. And of course, when I say that, it just means that we just don't quite understand what's actually going on. A lot of people, when you use the word paranormal or supernatural, their eyes kind of glaze over and it's like, yeah, you're just telling, ghost stories. But a lot of these men in black reports are very much like Ghost or the Shadow People or just there's just something not quite human about them. The recent uptick of people seeing black-eyed children, that's very reminiscent of a lot of the earlier Men in Black reports. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of these cases, the men in black would say, would show up at your door and ask to be invited in. And, despite the fact that, here's some strange looking people on your front doorstep, you've never seen them before, most people will just open their door and, yeah, come on in. And then afterwards they'll say, I don't know why I did that.
It's because you I guess you feel sorry for, these black-eyed children or these entities. In fact, I remember when I first heard of the black-eyed children. In fact, it came here from the Northwest. Somebody was actually stopping to get beer, and a child comes up and knocks on the window and said, let me in, take me home. And then when they took him to what they believed was his house, he walked out and said thank you. When they looked again, he was gone, and they thought he had disappeared. Same with these men in black that are being seen in Iowa. They blink and you miss them, or they jump out in front of the car and you're afraid you're going to drive off the road. Police just say, we don't know what it is, but a lot of people are claiming they're seeing these men in black, which makes me realize that, there was a time of the G-men. There was a time of these agents who were going in and telling people you didn't see anything, no UFOs or whatever. You see the cartoonish men in black in the theaters. When you go to the movies, you see Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones as the agents in Men in Black, and people seem to think there's some cartoonish entity. But I've appeared on shows. I was on American Monsters on Destination America, and I thought, from what I've experienced, what I've seen is that the Men in Black will do anything. They would even harm you. And there's so many different, I guess you could personifications of this Man in Black entity. You mentioned like the black-eyed children is one, the shadow entities. There's also the grinning man, which at one time we did a show. In fact, we could even open up calls for the grinning man. People dream about the grinning man. They see the grinning man standing there looking over them in their sleep, and he has this grin on his face like he's about to eat you, or he has this grin on his face. It's kind of an evil smirk. And people dream about this, and they can't get it out of their heads. And I remember I had a dream about the grinning man once, and it was very creepy. And I told somebody this story a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. This is my dream. I was actually in this meadow, or this farm area, kind of like Iowa, I guess, in this farm area. And what I saw was this beautiful sunset. And it was this beautiful sunset, farm area. I looked and I saw this, those old windmills that, at farms, and they're kind of creaking, and it's black silhouetted against the sunset, and see this little farmhouse, and I could smell the grass, and I could hear the mosquitoes buzzing and all this. And then all of a sudden I heard something like, the straw behind me crack. And I look around, and standing there is this grinning man. He was wearing overalls, and he had white hair, just white long hair. And he had the grin on his face. He looked at me with his grin. He was smiling. And just with the grin, he reached up. He put his hands on both the sides of my head, and he twisted it. Yeah. And I woke up. He twisted my neck, and I heard the crack, and I woke up. And I woke up with my heart pounding and terrified, because it was just a split second where everything was just like innocent and beautiful and pristine. And then behind me lurked this grinning man with this evil grin on his face. And they say that, if you see the grinning man in your dreams, it means something terrible is going to happen to somebody or it's already happened to someone. But I don't even recall what happened after I saw this. But it was so terrifying to be there in this pristine area, feeling all safe and secure, and then looking behind me, there's this man with white hair wearing coveralls. He was wearing coveralls, looked like a farmer. He could have been a farmer, like I was on some farmer's land. He's standing there with this grinning face, and he had long white hair. And kind of like Uncle Sam without the goatee, comes up, looks me right in the face, and smiles at me like, yeah, I really think you're wonderful. Kind of a weird, creepy, no spirit type of smile. Takes and grabs my head and just twists my neck until my neck breaks. And it frightened me and woke me up. And, and that's different incarnations of the Men in Black myth and craziness. And I tell you, even talking about it now, it's got me choked up and frightened. But the MIBs, the Men in Black, in Iowa, they're seeing them now. On the road, police have been investigating this in Muscatine, Iowa. It's a county. Have you seen crazy Men in Black and the Grinning Man? We'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. Tonight, the Men in Black, just what are they? Reports of Men in Black appearing in Iowa. Startling motorists in a rural highway. Police are investigating, but have no leads as to what's going on. And it gives us reason to discuss the Men in Black and the nightmare that exists inside all of us. It comes from the most primitive side of the brain. It's horror that exists between dream time and consciousness. It's the feeling of an ominous sense of doom as you realize that you are not alone in an otherwise safe and secure place. It's even more chilling when you hear about the Men in Black under investigation because no one knows what they are in a rural community. Those of you who don't know what's going on in Iowa now, they are seeing, or residents there are worried because the Men in Black are appearing on roadsides. Some of them are even jumping in front of traffic. Here's the report.
Our top story tonight, men in black trench coats jumping out at cars driving at night. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gary Matigiak.
And I'm Paula Sands. Police in Muscatine are trying to get to the bottom of this. These reports about this mysterious several men in black out on the roads at night, sometimes stepping right out in front of cars as they pass by.
Yes. The Muscatine County Sheriff's Office also says they have officers patrolling the areas where these men have already been spotted.
Tim Schwartz with us tonight on Ground Zero. After listening to our report, I've been hearing that report about the men in black in Iowa. And you did a search on Google Maps and you found that it was it's a rural area there.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So these men in black are appearing on the side of the road. They're scaring people driving down the road at night. They step in front of traffic and they almost get hit. They don't get hit. Okay. There's been no fatalities. Question I have is, if I were to see a man in a trench coat or in a black cape standing on the side of the road, or at least walking in front of my vehicle, I would stop the vehicle. I would get out to see just who is in the trench coat or in the cape, and I would try to tell them or at least confront them. But see, where would they hide if they were to do this? I mean, if the motorists see them and they almost hit them, where are they hiding so they can't be found? And why do the police say that it's a prank done by teenagers when, they can't find them, or the people who see them don't pull over and say, well, what's going on here? That's the thing that I don't understand.
Well, and you have to realize also, Clyde, that, in this day and age of social media, in a small area like that, if teenagers were involved, it wouldn't be too long before they'd be bragging about it, on Snapchat or Facebook. And, and soon it will spread through the community who's actually responsible. Right. But if you base this on other instances throughout history, probably nothing will ever be discovered. Nobody will ever admit to have been responsible for this. The police may actually go and arrest a couple of kids and say, we solved it. But then a couple of weeks later, you'll find out that, these kids weren't really responsible. And it'll just go down in the annals of history as being unsolved. Now, the point that you made about, you would stop the car and, and get out and, see what was going on. A lot of people who have these kinds of experiences, they're suddenly hit, with, overwhelming feelings of fear and terror in a situation like that. It's just completely, they'll say afterwards, it's just completely unreasonable. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation, but I felt like that I was going to die. What a lot of people will say, and they'll just hit the accelerator and get the heck out of there as quickly as they possibly can.
Well, and I was having a discussion, and that's why I find it interesting that this story is finally, it made it mainstream. I was having a discussion with a gentleman, Sunday, as a matter of fact. It was during the game. I was having wings with Liam, my son, and we were standing there getting wings, and this guy recognized me, and he was telling me about how after he got back from his tour in Iraq, he said that he was having these vivid dreams of a shadow entity over his bed. And he said he would wake up and he would see it looking down at him, grinning at him, looking as if it wanted to harm him. And I was thinking, wow, this is an amazing story. It's a scary story. I mean, I've heard people talking about the incubi and the succubi, and I've had them talk about all these things with me, and how these spirits show up in the bed, or they show up on the side in a closet, and they're hiding there and they're grinning or laughing. One guy even called one night, we were talking about this, he said he bit one. He bit it and he said it was just a strange sensation in his mouth when he bit the thing. But it was odd that this out of nowhere, this gentleman was telling me the story about a shadow entity that appeared to him. And I was reminiscing back that, a lot of these dark entities, whether they be the men in black that we see in, UFO stories, or perhaps like the Hat Man. Many people talk about the Hat Man now. That's another, story that is, come about. Slender Man, a tulpa that was created on a website and became reality for two little girls who wanted to commit murder. These dark denizens have come from bad dreams and into our reality. And when you look at the shadowy archetypes that have been known by all of these names, they give them the boogeyman names, everything from the Men in Black to Hat Man to Slender Man to the Rake. In fact, in this new movie, The Conjuring 2, they have the Crooked Man, which is another character that's kind of creepy, and it shows up and give me the willies just thinking about it. It looked kind of like Slender Man. So we have the same type of being that is seen by everyone. And it makes me wonder if it's a default in some respects, or that there are many forms of this boogeyman that is the dark man. I mean, I know that there are stories, Native American stories of the black clothed man in the forest and how he's scared. That many European tales are about these dark men or these black hooded men that walk the streets. Some say that they're like vampires. Others say that they eat human flesh and livestock. I mean, this legend all the way up to the reality is something that I think says something about who we are, don't you think?
Oh, very much so. I really do think that these entities, whatever they are shaped by our social expectations. You know, it's the Chinese would call these creatures, especially, you know, like the black-eyed children and the men in black, they would call them hungry ghosts, because they attempt to get into your house for whatever reason, but they have to ask permission first. It's like the old vampire legends, you know, where the vampire would stand outside the house and call your name and ask to be invited in, you know, but we're not supposed to believe in vampires anymore, but yet we're seeing these very same type of creatures. But I mean, they've taken on a more modern appearance, you know, a 21st century, you know, appearance, yet they're playing the same games that they played, you know, 1,000 years ago.
I was even reading that there are entities now that have been seen. We've got the black-eyed children, the men in black. We have the grinning man, we have Slender Man, we have all these characters that apparently people see or they experience or they're frightened of in their sleep or in their nightmares, or they see them on the road, you know, and yet there was another account that I was reading that there are women now that are seen that are, they wear black eyeglasses, they're pale, and they wear wigs, and they say they look like they've had cancer. And they're very like, you know, the skin's kind of wrinkled and kind of gray, and some people say they even look alien-like. And they're wearing sunglasses, and they're wearing black, and they appear. And the thing is this is classic ghoulishness. This is something that I think comes from the consciousness. And I think that if we're all in this darkness, which it seems the world is heading towards, these manifestations, if you believe in Tulpaman, these manifestations can appear, and many people are dreaming about them. They're experiencing them. They're seeing them, like here in Iowa. They're seeing them on the side of the road. I mean, this is something I think that says something about who we are and what we're going through right now.
Very much so. And you mentioned the women in black. I mean, there have been, we use the term men in black as, I mean, that's just kind of a catch-all phrase. But I mean, right from the very beginning, there have been reports of women in black, you know, rather than maybe the traditional 3 men in black, you would have like 2 men and a woman, or sometimes just a man and a woman. Or as you had in Great Britain back in the 1980s, you know, you had what were called the phantom social workers.
Oh, yeah.
Which were traditionally women who would come to, generally it would be like a single mother's door and knock and, you know, ask. They said they were from the social services, and that there'd been reports that the babies had been abused and they were going to take them with it.
Right.
And but when when the mother would go and then call social services, you know, nobody had been set out there.
Right.
Yet nobody was able to trace these women down.
Well, and it's also triggered the satanic panic of the 80s as well, where people are saying that they were Satanists taking the children away, and now we know the truth about the so-called pedophile rings of England that may have been there in the 80s, which is frightening that these social workers, these phantom satanic social workers, could have been very real and not some entity. But people are experiencing these things. Maybe you've experienced them too. We'd like to hear your phone calls tonight at 888-673-3700. What triggered this conversation? Men in black seen on a country road in Iowa. Police are investigating. They can't find what is going on. They think it's a prank, but they can't trace it, especially in a small rural community. 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Hey, Tim, I can't pass up this call. I want to go right to it. Let's go to Ryan in Texas. Hi, Ryan. You say you're a sheriff. Tell us about what you've experienced.
Okay, it was about 2013, about this same time of the year. It was either late June or early July, and I was patrolling a rural road, part of our county that has no houses on it whatsoever, very remote. And I was riding down the road, and all of a sudden I saw somebody on the side of the road at a distance, and as I got closer, I realized it was somebody in a all-black like cloak. That's the only thing I can explain it as. Had a hood on it. It flowed down his body. I couldn't see any arms, couldn't see any legs, went all the way to the ground. And as I passed the subject, it turned and looked towards me, and doing my job, I wanted to turn around and make contact with them and see who they are, what they're doing out here, if they need help or whatnot. And I went maybe 40 yards past where I saw them, turned around, it was gone. So I thought, well, maybe they ran from me.
Were you able to see the facial features on what it was looking at you?
No facial features whatsoever. It just kind of turned to where I could see like the the hood of the cloak. It was the black hole in the hood of the cloak that I could see. And it was an eerie feeling when it turned and looked at me. And but I couldn't see any facial features or anything like that at all.
There was no place for it to hide? Is that what you're telling me, too? That there was no way it could have...
There's barbed wire fences on both sides of the road and open cow pasture for several hundred yards before there was any woods or any brush. And I spotlighted the whole area, drove back and forth several times. I've never found anybody.
Tim, do you have anything to add to this? Because this is creeping me out a little.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's no creepy story here.
Well, I want to know is, do you know, have there been other reports of strange things going on in that area in the past? Traditionally an area, the teenagers always know where, the ghosts are, on the haunted roads and things like that. I mean, are you aware of anything else that's ever happened there before?
No, not to my knowledge. I've never heard anybody talk about anything or any other deputies or any of the residents that live near that road say anything about anything, mysterious or weird going on out there.
Do you have to report something like that, Ryan, or did you just keep it to yourself?
No, I didn't. I didn't have to report. I didn't even put it out over the radio just because I would have if I would have made contact with the person, but I never, with the person or thing or whatever it was, I never saw it again after I passed it the first time.
Did it scare you?
Yeah, it shook me up for a couple of days, really and truly. A few nights later, I worked the same area and went down the road, and I had this just kind of the skin crawling on the back of my neck feeling as I drove up and down the road. Just the unknown part of it. What was it? Was it somebody playing a prank? Was it something else? I don't know. That was the part that kind of played with me a little bit.
Kind of a very remote area to be performing some prank, especially in front of a sheriff. That just basically gives me the creeps. What's that? What's that, Ryan?
I'd have seen their car too if it was somebody playing jokes. There's no way they could have hit a car on this road anywhere without me passing it. I mean, there's no side roads, there's no nothing. It's just one straight shot road.
Ryan, your story just baffles me and gives me the creeps. Thank you for kicking off the show tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And thank you for your service as a sheriff. I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Ryan, a Texas sheriff, out in the middle of nowhere, sees a cloaked figure standing there, gives him a look. He goes back to investigate. The figure disappears. He sees no car, no way anyone could have hoaxed that. It just reminds me of this story from Iowa. Tim Schwartz with us tonight on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. I'm seriously shaking. That is a very frightening story, Tim. Good thing we're taking a break right now. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. I can do all the talking about the Men in Black tonight. I could also have my guest tonight, Tim Schwartz, do all the talking. But before we go to Tim and before we talk to the callers, I want to read something. This is the Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Facebook page. And it says this. It says, we've had several reports of men dressed in black entering the roadway in rural Muscatine County. We don't have any new information about these people, but we have also seen several posts on Facebook about the same type of activity. It would be extremely helpful to the sheriff's office if you witness this type of activity that you call 911 immediately. Your help is greatly appreciated. And there are a number of people who have commented about what's going on here, and anything from they're laughing at the sheriff's office. They're laughing at people, but there are some people who are very concerned because they say that it's been seen that these entities or whatever they may be have been seen all over. Also seen in Illinois. Here's a guy, Brad. Well, playing games on the side of the road just put people's lives in danger. You get the wrong person to panic or get scared by one of these idiots jumping out, and they could overreact and cause a car accident where someone does get hurt or worse. Connie says this, I'm just saying these fools think they're funny, scaring people. Beatrice writes this. This is an interesting post. I would really appreciate it If this was made public through the radio, TV, or the journal, my parents don't have a computer and all they know is what we've told them. My son has experienced this and it's no joke. It was really a frightening experience to him, and the concerns he has for his wife and son driving at night now is a concern for all of us. I hope the citizens know this is no joke. Whether the image is a serious one or not a serious one, they put an image of a ghost on the Facebook page. Muscatine PD has no answers. I've seen this. It frightens me. The men in black frighten me. Someone jokes about aliens. Last night there was a similar occurrence, but it was on the Illinois side, just outside of Illinois City. Hunter Kimball. This is the post I was talking about last night. Here's another one from Dawn Lane. She says, this has been going on for a while. My daughter and her boyfriend saw the men in black 3 to 4 weeks ago on Highway 22. She told me about it, but didn't seem too concerned, or I just shrugged it off as strange occurrence. She didn't seem scared, just thought it was really strange. Timmy here says they are only showing up during significant dates and events. Be looking for something to happen on June 22nd. Because of Highway 22, I guess. They're saying that they think that something scary is going to happen tomorrow. What do you think of that? Tim, that is just bizarre that this has happened. I think Tim's back. I think we just lost his call. But did you hear all these people calling from actually all the people posting on the Facebook page for the police department saying that the men in black, that it's a very dangerous thing. People are terrified. A lot of people are terrified. Some people are joking, but others are terrified about this thing. They're saying that they don't know where they're coming from. They said they were seeing these men in black in cemeteries. They said they saw one guy walking around in the cemetery with a trench coat. Someone else was saying they saw it in Illinois City. On the Illinois side, this is amazing. Maybe they're migrating. Hell, I don't know. It's just that, the police, are very serious. They posted on their Facebook, and the people are also very serious and trying to figure it out. Some people say it's a joke. Some people say that they're pranksters living in a hotel complex, or some sort of hotel that's far away. I don't know. I mean, I also, the Texas sheriff that called also, is something that we need to take into account, saying that he saw something like this and that it disappeared and there was no car or anything. They were just out in the middle of nowhere, whatever this thing was, in a black cloak, and it looked right at him.
Well, a lot of these cases, Clyde, they seem to be, ghostly in appearance, but then you'll turn around and, as like you said, people will actually see what, they'll swear are, physical, people walking alongside of the road or, standing next to a cemetery or something like that. It reminds me, our good friend, Timothy Green Beckley, mm-hmm. he has a theory that, a lot of these men in black cases may actually be the form of almost like, what do you refer to? Like astral zombies almost, that something will take over a person, just anybody, you, me, or anybody, and they will then they'll go out and they will do something, like take on the guise of a man in black, do their dirty work, go back with no recollection of what they did. And that may explain. I mean, I know that you have talked to people before who claimed that they were men in black, and that they said that they were born that way or impelled to do what they were doing.
They are born that way, and they do this without even thinking about the morality of it all. They do it because they feel that it's necessary to continue the progression of mankind. They are like custodians. They are here to do work. They're here to do, anything from, if they're told that they have to bomb a shopping center, they'll bomb a shopping center. If they're told they have to, save a little girl because this little girl is going to be some famous person later on, they have to go and do this. Kind of reminds me of the observers in the television show Fringe, where they were there to keep things moving along and to keep the progression going, kind of cleaning up. I don't know if you ever saw the Adjustment Bureau. They also, I was just thinking of that. They're like those characters where they were saying that we step back, we let you guys do things on your own. And when we step back at the turn of the century, at the turn of the 20th century, We had World War I, World War II, and we almost annihilated ourselves with a bomb. Then they stepped back in and took over again. And the one guy says, well, the world's pretty screwed up now. What are you doing? He says, hey, it's still here, isn't it? We're still keeping it together. As much as we hate to tell you this, it's on the brink of disaster. But these men in black or these custodians, whatever they may be, are holding things together. And they appear in the weirdest of places.
Very much so. That's why I'm thinking, the phone call that we got from the sheriff who saw the figure that was dressed like a monk. If you really look into that, he had a cowl over his face and a long flowing type of robe. I investigated a case here in Indiana where somebody was driving down a rural road and they had to stop because there was a procession of beings or whatever entities, whatever you want to call it, all dressed the same, dressed just like what the sheriff described, crossing the road. And I mean, he honked the horns, flashed the light. He thought maybe it was some kind of, who knows?
College prank.
He thought they were real.
Yeah.
But they just kept slow. And he said there was like 100 of them. It took him, like 10 minutes to cross the road. And he sat there and patiently waited for them to get across. And then after they did, he, went forward a little bit and looked into the field that they had walked into. There was nobody there. He said there was, there had to have been at least 100 people, but they had just vanished. They just disappeared.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier. I mean, there's this, what they call this multiverse, or this, I guess you could say, the multiverse, sometimes kicks out these strange entities or these strange type of, beings. And it's like, what was said earlier, Bullard had said that, the men in black are basically the human beings that fill the shoes of angels and demons. And they do the work of angels and demons. And then, like you say, they wake up one day and they realize that they have to put on the clothes, do the thing, and go do what they do. And they're under the spell of something that tells them they need to do this. And then, it all goes back to the, what do you call it, the zombified or the sleeper, or they programmed you, or you've been programmed into, you hear like a trigger song. There was a show, I think it was, The Blacklist, where there was a girl in the show and she'd hear that Ink Spot song called My Echo, My Shadow and Me. When she heard that song, My Echo, My Shadow and Me, when she heard that song, it triggered her to become somebody else. And she became like this massive, killer, this young girl who was like, seemed innocent and sweet and very shy. Here's that Ink Spot song, and she immediately turns into this very capable killer with guns, and she goes out and she does all kinds of criminal activity, comes back, she hears something else that triggers her back into being who she is, and no one's the wiser. Kind of like Chuck Barris thing where he said he was a CIA killer or whatever. I mean, that's another way that we can explain this. But then there is that supernatural element that everybody's seeing, the black hat man, the dark figure boogeyman, the demonic dark figure in the bedroom looking down at you. It's just some creepy things that go bump in the night again. Tim Schwartz, my guest tonight on Ground Zero. So glad to have him on the program tonight, taking your phone calls. Men in black have been seen in Iowa, standing on a rural highway. People are saying they're going to jump out and get killed, or something else is afoot. I mean, no car, nothing that gives them a reason to hide. They're just there. Whatever they may be, supernatural or otherwise, it's still under investigation. But many people in that area are frightened. They're worried that either someone's going to get killed, or that it may be something unearthly or beyond this world. 888-673-3700. We'll be back with more Ground Zero right here. Don't go away. In Muscatine County, they're seeing men in black on the side of the road. They're wondering who they are. They're wondering if they're pranksters, but it's in the middle of nowhere in a rural area, and it makes you wonder where they disappeared to when the lights flash on them. We've already had an account from a sheriff saying that he saw something similar in Texas when he went to investigate whatever it was that was in the road with a cloak had disappeared. So I have to take the leap of logic and think it may be supernatural. What do you say, Tim?
Well, it's interesting that you'd bring that up, Clyde, because supernatural, I think, probably fits it very closely. Last year in that very same county, now we talked in an earlier segment about satanic rituals and the like. In that very same county, the Baxter family lost 40 goats from, they say, over a 2-day 2-night period, from what they said was a dog because they could hear it barking. Now, these were regular sized goats, and this dog managed to kill all but 4 of them in 2 nights. Each one of these goats were ripped apart and sacrificed, basically. And now we're seeing these dark figures in the very same county. And the strange thing is that the farmer shot at this dog. He couldn't see it clearly, but he was never able to hit it. And I mean, I don't know, if you know, but, it's very hard for a dog to kill a goat. Maybe, he may be able to kill one, but almost 40 of them in a 2-night period. There's something strange going on in that incident.
Well,
and now we're seeing these dark figures.
Right. Well, it also sounds like a chupacabra story, too. I mean, I remember when the chupacabra story was first reported, I talked to the Department of Agriculture in Puerto Rico. And it was funny because the chupacabra they said that what it was is they believed it was a dog. It was a special type of dog, like a mutated dog from a experiment that went awry, some chimera that went awry or something. But they had said from the beginning that it was some sort of a dog or canine. And so whenever I see these reports of these, frail-looking animals with these big teeth, the double rack teeth and everything, and say it's some mad dog, I'm not going, well, that's what the chupacabra allegedly was some mad dog that had an insatiable appetite for blood, mostly from goats and chickens. So I don't know. I mean, you're listening to Ground Zero. The chupacabra song. The song's nearly 20 years old. It's old. Blow the dust off of that one from 1995 when Ground Zero was in its infancy. It did actually have a debut on the Art Bell Show back in the day. Tim Schwartz with us on Ground Zero, talking about the strange creatures or even the strange apparitions of the men in black in rural areas, especially Iowa right now. Apparently in southeast Iowa, people are claiming they're seeing the men in black standing on the street in the middle of nowhere. And motorists have almost run them over. Some people say it's a joke. Other people are saying, no, it's not. It's something we really need to take into consideration. It's really scary. Once again, this is the visage of the tall man, the grinning man, the man with the black hat, slender man, all of these strange dark figures in our minds that are approaching or otherwise manifesting. So, it's some creepy stuff. And, Tim Schwartz is here to talk about it with us. I find it interesting too that, in rural areas, and you brought up the chupacabra. I know that, there have been many news reports where people have claimed to have shot one or at least had one, and they always say, oh, that's not a chupacabra. And I'm thinking, well, what is a chupacabra? Has anybody really classified one? Do they really know what one is? Or, I mean, what does it have to fit some supernatural, criteria in order for it to be real? What do you think, Tim?
Well, I don't, when we've got the name chupacabra or goat sucker, I mean, we bring up the image of like you described. I mean, it looked almost like a reptilian, gray type of creature, it had like big eyes, but, about the same size, but instead a lot of times it had scales, and like some of them even said they had, wings on their back and they could, fly for short distances.
Right.
But actually, I think we're kind of attaching an image to that, that dark shadow in the night, so to speak. We've had stories throughout history of things killing animals and even people, but especially livestock. You get up in the morning, there's all of your livestock mysteriously killed, and then pretty soon in the same area you start to have reports of ghostly figures, the men in black or the dark cowled figures being seen along the country lanes or in the cemeteries. And it almost makes me think of, the old necromancing theories where you'd have a blood sacrifice in order to call up the spirits or the demons or what have you. And so, I mean, have we seen a very similar situation there in Iowa where, you had 40 goats killed in a matter of days, reportedly by an unknown dog or, a black shuck, as they're called in Great Britain. And then we start seeing these almost supernatural types of entities prowling the roads at night, scaring people. Now, how long is it going to be before some of these residents will start seeing these things, in their house.
Right.
Or like our last caller, they'll wake up and there'll be, these things, coming out of the closet or, standing alongside their beds or even, ringing their doorbells in the middle of the night. You'll probably start seeing that soon.
We did have a full moon in the solstice last night. And
that's right.
Many astrologists or astrologers have said, by the way, this means that it's a night of rituals and a night of all kinds of craziness. And maybe there were rituals going on last night and entities were conjured or otherwise brought forward. We were just talking about that there's a new movie called The Conjuring that came out, and they actually associated a number of attacks, some well-known ghost and poltergeist cases, with this demon that had nothing to do with anything called I think it was Valak. And apparently, Valak had nothing to do with these cases, but they brought this demon in. It happens to be the demon that shows up during, celestial events and, is the guardian of the viper pit, the dark, vipers of the abyss. I'm like going, boy, they sure timed that one pretty, well. I don't know about that. Let's go to Brian in Illinois. Brian, how you run with Tim Schwartz? Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Great show tonight.
Thank you.
Mine is not typical. This was back in 1956. I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and it was in a populous area of Chicago. I woke up at around 2 o'clock, walked out into the living room, and there was the only light in the room was coming from a street light from outside through the porch window. And there was somebody sitting in a chair with a, like Alpine-style hat, but he was so black, and he was in an area that would have been shown some light, but it was like he was sucking in all the light. It was that kind of dark black. And I got sort of scared, and I went back to my room, and I came back out, and it was gone. But it was the same thing. I had this ominous feeling, and I don't know. It's sort of weird.
Well, they're all weird, and
I've never told anybody either.
Well, I'm glad you're telling us. I mean, they do show up from time to time. Like I said, I had the dream of the grinning man who broke my neck, and it just scared me. I have had shadow figures in my room before who have spoken to me telepathically. That's maybe once or twice. It's not something that's habitual, but everybody's had that moment, and it makes you wonder if they appear from dream time or if they find themselves, like I say, in a multidimensional, multiverse type way where we see them, but they're seen in several different versions of what we call our reality. And so it's kind of like they break through our protective matrix that we live in, and they show themselves for reasons unknown. It just doesn't make any sense, but it's still something that is supernatural and bizarre. Let's go to Ryan in Oregon. You're on with Tim Schwartz. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. When I heard you guys were talking about this, I was just floored. I had something happen to me when I was over the road driving truck in very rural Arkansas. I was a trainer. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, my student, he woke up and he came through the curtain and he sat the other seat. And I asked, "What are you doing up?" And he said, all of a sudden I couldn't sleep. And right about then I look up and it's very rural. There was no cars parked along the road, no houses, just forest. There's somebody standing on the white line, on the freeway, on the side of the road. And I clicked the cruise control off, and slowed down and started to move over to the left lane. And there was a guy in a black suit, and he was just standing there, stock still, looking out onto the freeway. Really strange. And I've tried over the years to rationalize what that was, and I haven't been able to. There was just nothing around out there, nothing.
Yeah, that's the strangest part is when you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no other explanation except something supernatural. Something.
Well, yeah. The really strange part was I was kind of freaked out and kind of scared about it. But my student, he's like, "Well, maybe we should stop and see if he's okay." And I said, "I'm not stopping." And he was really insistent that we stop. And I finally said, "Well, we get about 2 miles down the road. I'll pull over. I'll wait about an hour. If you're not back, I'm leaving." And he kind of hushed up then, but he had this like crazy sense that he needed to go to this person.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I had just the opposite, that I needed to get the hell out of there.
I would have done that.
But, it was strange, and I haven't told too many people, but it was, real odd.
Well, Ryan,
was this guy looking at you as you approached him in the truck?
he was looking straight off into the freeway.
Okay.
And he didn't really move. And the only way I could describe really quickly how he looked was kind of like Agent Smith on The Matrix, in a suit.
Yeah.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe he's drunk in a wedding party and he's lost, but there was nothing out there. No reason for anybody to be standing out there, especially in a suit.
Right. Exactly. I think that's how it is. It's just, they're just out of place. That's why they're noticed. They stick out like a sore thumb, Tim. And that's why, when I first saw this Men in Black story, they say, oh, it could be pranksters, but the police probably haven't even bothered to go out there and investigate because they just think that people are seeing things. But you go to their Facebook page of the sheriff's office, and people are really frightened about these men in trench coats. They're really frightened by them. So
yeah, I like how the sheriff's department put up the picture of the Sandman from The Nightmare Before Christmas. It was almost like they're treating it a little bit like a joke.
Yeah, and it's not. People are really frightened by it. Ryan, thank you for the call. Let's see. Let's go now to Clay in Ohio. Hi, Clay. You're on Ground Zero. Go ahead.
Hello, Clyde. Hello, Tim. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm 43 years old, and when I was a child all the way up to I was in my early teens, I would have this such fear I could not move. I could open my eyes, and there would be a man wearing bib overalls and like a work shirt, like one of the plaid-type work shirts, white, grayish hair. His eyes were like black sunken in underneath the eyes, and he had perfect teeth when he'd smile. And when I was able to focus on him, he would float up through the ceiling. And I would have this for many years. And then sometimes there would be these like, don't they describe them as black fish floating around the room when he came.
Black fish? I've never heard that before.
That's all I can describe them.
So there were black things
black
swimming
dots.
around up, and people see black fish or entities or things floating around?
Well, it sounds an awful lot like Robert Monroe, who was wrote several books on astral projection, and he would say that in the process of when he would first come out of his body, that he would be harassed sometimes by, and he described him as kind of like almost like a fish type of entities that would attach themselves to his spiritual body, almost like the that's what I call like not moray eels, but those fish that attach themselves, to sharks and whales and things like that. Right. And he said he'd have a heck of a time trying to get them off of him. He called them like parasites, like spiritual parasites.
You're kidding me? Really, spiritual parasites?
Spiritual parasites.
It's funny because I'm doing an investigation right now in not really spiritual parasites, but parasites or bugs. They're detecting now that basically control the mind, control the mind of animals. I'm getting that. I'm getting these like what we call overlapping things that are coincidences and synchronicities about what I'm talking about further in the show later on in the week. And boy, that was right on the money there, Tim. Clay, thank you so much for your call. That was an amazing story, and we have more to come. We'd like to hear from you tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. The Men in Black, the grinning man, the man with the hat, the black hat, Slender Man, all of these creatures and all of these apparitions are being seen by people. Right now in Iowa, though, the police are investigating appearances of these men in black trench coats. No one knows what they're doing there. They're in the middle of nowhere, and people are frightened. They're afraid they're going to jump in front of cars, get killed, but maybe they won't because they're just not really there. They're kind of interdimensional, or maybe they're just to frighten the rural area, frighten the area there, and frighten the people in that rural area. 888-673-3700. We'll be back. You're on with Tim Schwartz on Ground Zero. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I just wanted to talk about an experience I had in 1984.
Sure.
Okay, I was at my house, and I was, I went to the door because I heard a knock, and I looked outside, and I saw like 4 people that were almost kind of gray-black. It was 2 women and 2 men, and all of them had black sunglasses, and it was in the daytime, and they were, they were all just in kind of a black gear, kind of gray, but they seem to be kind of a vapor, not really there. You know what I mean? Like vapor, but in dark gray, black. And then they were carrying a black suitcase, and they had a black car, which was old-fashioned, you know, like those classic cars, that the bomb cars.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked them, you know, if I could help them, and they said that they were looking for my sister, and I told them that she wasn't there at the moment, and I just said if they wanted to leave a message, and I wanted, you know, to let them know who they were. And they told me they were from Avon. And I just kind of didn't think so, because they didn't look to be Avon people. They were just all dressed in black, you know, kind of, like I said, gray black, not really dark black.
When was this? 1984? It was in 1984, and they said they were from Avon. Tim, doesn't that sound pretty? Doesn't that sound pretty archaic? Isn't it true that the men in black, whenever they say stupid things, they think they sound hip, but in reality they're really dumb?
It kind of was. Yeah, it was. I didn't laugh, but I just kind of I just said whatever.
Were there really Avon ladies? Were there really Avon ladies and representatives in 1984 that go door to door still? I really don't think so. That's bizarre.
And then they were all with sunglasses, and then it just didn't. The whole thing was unreal, you know. But they did kind of seem to be vapor, kind of not really there, you know, kind of vaporish. And but then after they told me they were from Avon, I saw one of them going to the back of the house, and they seemed like they were looking for something. And then, like the same way they came, which is, I'm not sure how they arrived there, and then I never saw how they left either. So all I know is they knocked, and that's when I first saw them, but I don't know how they got there, if they actually drove in, and I didn't see them driving out. That was it. It was just a story that I saw in 1984.
It sounds like a classic Men in Black encounter, Tim. Like I was saying earlier, you know, they told her they were from Avon, and I've heard stories that the Men in Black sometimes they use euphemisms and other words are so outdated and irrelevant. Is that true? Have you heard that as well, Tim?
Oh, very, very much so. There's been cases where they have come to the door claiming to be encyclopedia salesmen. or taking like a census surveys or things like that. But yeah, very much so. I mean, and I have heard, like the caller just said, I have heard of them saying that they were, you know, Avon representatives.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Linda, thank you so much for your experience, and thank you for your call. Tim, great having you on. We're going to continue this conversation all night long, but having you on board talking about it is amazing. If people want to contact you and get your conspiracy newsletter, how can they do that?
Yes, well, all they have to do, they go to my website at conspiracyjournal.com. We have a weekly email newsletter that we send out for free. You can sign up for that. And, you know, it's funny that, you know, we've been talking about this subject tonight because Tim Beckley and myself, we've got a book coming out soon called Alien Mind Control. So Men in Black fit right in with that.
Fantastic, Tim. Thank you so much for being on the program tonight. Such a pleasure having you on, and such a great topic, too, out of the blue with these strange Men in Black in Iowa. And thank you so much for the, I guess you call it the geographical sense, because not very many people know the area, and having that information, I think, is also vital to the story. So, Tim, thank you so much for being on the program tonight.
Thank you, Clyde. I appreciate you having me on.
You take care. And now...